Are you ready to unleash your full potential and become unstoppable in your success and leadership?
Welcome to the Unleashed and Unstoppable podcast, where we provide powerful insights and strategies for coaches, corporate leaders, and entrepreneurs. I'm Alexanne Carter.
And I'm Carol Register, and we're certified master neurocoaches who are passionate about helping you overcome your limiting beliefs and optimize your performance.
Each week, we'll be sharing actionable tips and strategies using neuroscience, from interviews with industry experts to solo episodes, to help you lead a life of power, purpose, and possibility on your own terms.
Join our community of like-minded individuals. Hit subscribe now, and let's be unleashed and unstoppable together.
So in the leadership room, and I know you guys hear me talk often a lot about being in the leadership space and training and coaching those next level leaders. And there's something that I learned early on as a leader about clearing the breakdown. So what do I mean about a breakdown? Essentially, a quote unquote breakdown is where there's like a disconnection, or there's a misalignment, or we find ourselves out of integrity with our word, our commitment. Maybe it's led to some confusion, or maybe it's led to a little bit of a heated discussion between you and a loved one, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'll never forget my very first quote unquote breakdown. I immediately, because I ended up being late for this call with my coach, and I remember immediately jumping into pointing the finger to somebody else. It was the external circumstance that led into me being late. And it's so funny because as I started to share exactly the reason why I was late, I caught myself and I was like, hold on a second. If I am 100% responsible 100% of the time, then where do I play in this scenario? And it was such a pivotal moment for me in my leadership, because I realized at that moment how easy it is to want to point the fingers at everybody else.
Yeah.
But if I'm responsible and I'm a leader, it made me really stop and think, okay, what was really the quote unquote breakdown in the situation? And I think why this is so powerful, and why we want to talk about this today, Carol, is that this is really impactful in our as leaders, in our relationships, in our partnerships, with our kids, with our partners and our husbands and our wives, and our girlfriends and boyfriends and friends. And that I feel when you can take a moment to pause and really get curious and towards of, okay, what really contributed to this outcome?
Yeah.
One, it helps interrupt the pattern so it doesn't continue. And two, it makes you seem human.
Yes.
Because, right, like, I feel like sometimes we're trying to walk around like we're so perfect, and we're all human. We all make mistakes. We all get overwhelmed, or we get frustrated. I mean, we're human. But when we can take a moment to pause and reflect on what really led to this, it can really change the trajectory of relationships, especially as a leader, right?
Yeah. I think this is so powerful, and I think it's super, super important to address too, because one of the things that I have found in my own life that I've been very guilty of is when I'm in a situation. I had this happen just recently where the panic's starting to rise, and I can feel it, and I can feel the knot in my throat, and my breathing gets really shallow, and I feel like I'm shaking. And I can tell I'm no longer grounded. I'm no longer centered. And this is one of the reasons we did the episode on having the toolbox of pattern interrupters. You've been in the situation where you're feeling that way, and you're feeling like, I can't swallow. I can't think straight. My experience has been, okay, I can no longer process logically. I have gone out of my thrive brain, and I have now gone into my survive brain. And then what has happened when I'm to the point where I'm staying grounded and I'm staying centered, I'm staying present, but I haven't quite caught my breath yet, is I become very defensive. extremely defensive. I'm like, oh, but they're not considering that done this and that I've taken care of this. And it's completely off the point of what's being shared when exactly what you were saying, Alex, when, I use the tools and acknowledge the breakdown, acknowledge the part that I'm playing in it, then clarity comes in. And I'm able to actually get out of that survival mode, regain feeling grounded, feeling centered, and going, all right, what part did I play in this? How is this meant for my learning? What's underneath the breakdown here? What's happening? And it really is transformative. It is so incredibly powerful when we acknowledge the breakdown. It is really, truly, and releases power. And so coming forward, once I am doing that, and maybe I've removed myself, maybe I've said, hey, give me just a minute. I need to go get grounded. I'll be back. Um, then I'm able to go, okay, what part am I playing this? And in my recent story, I found out that the part that I was playing was I was speaking words into life from my subconscious that I didn't even realize that I was speaking over a specific situation, and it was affecting the energy of the people that I love and care about. And they were starting to repeat to me that the feelings that they were having. I was like, oh, I feel that way too. Oh, oh, yeah. That's where being able to pause and take responsibility starts to immediately shift things. Immediately, right? So, okay, I'm speaking over a situation. I didn't even realize I was speaking life into this. I was giving words to ego, to limitation, to fear, to overwhelm. And once I stopped and acknowledged that, oh, wow, I didn't even realize it. It was hidden. It was operating in my subconscious. It was unaware. So taking that pause and being able to recenter put me back into a higher brain level where I could start to process and start to take a look at things in a healthy manner, in a manner that's going to lead to life and to function. So that was very powerful.
When you were talking, and I think this is really important for the leader, right, who's listening right now, is that you're a leader. People are looking up to you. You have probably more impact in the people around you than you realize, right? Whether as a parent, as a partner, leader in your team.
Yeah.
And as you're speaking, Carol, it's those mirror neurons, the mirror neurons that we're not even aware of, but it's just a beautiful example of how you show up and the things that you're saying now gets reflected in those loved ones. I'm thinking a lot about, parenting, and, Abby's almost 5. And so obviously, like, at her age, right, there's a lot of that big emotion, right? And it's really easy to, with our brains and how they're wired, to want to get triggered through that. But if we are the model, if we're the leader, and those mirror neurons are in effect, means I get to model it. And so that power of the pause is so important, because it's like, okay, hold on a second. Well, how do I want to see this as an outcome, right? And so being in that model, and that's why I love that episode that we did on the toolbox, because those are some great tools to lead into. I want to share something else that's really supported me as well, because a lot of this conversation is around the interaction with other people. And I don't know about you, Carol, but I know myself, we think about the fight, flight, or freeze. Oftentimes for me, right? And I think many of us, when our senses are on alert, there could be this fight. And what I have started to tell myself, right, again, our internal dialogue is, everybody wants to feel seen and heard. Everybody wants to feel seen and heard. And just by saying like that as a pattern interrupt, everybody wants to feel seen and heard, I find myself like almost like sitting back so that I can take a look at the situation as a whole versus just looking at like what's going on right here. And it's like, okay, if everybody wants to feel seen and heard, I now look at it from somebody else's perspective. And I found that's very powerful versus just being that reactive, and the like all the finger pointing, right? I mean, and yes, we're all human. We're not, no one's perfect. And so, yes, there's all about navigating different situations, but having just these little awarenesses of the fact of, okay, the mirror neurons, and like how I choose to acknowledge a breakdown, or how can I lead this and be the example. And everybody wants to feel seen and heard. So lead with curiosity and also take the ownership. I mean, Carol, there's misunderstanding between you and I this morning. And right, I think an old me many years ago would have been like on the defense, like but like applying what we're talking about today, it was like, okay, take a step back, look at the situation. If I'm responsible 100% of the time, then where's the breakdown? What was going on? And it was powerful for me because I realized sometimes I make a lot of assumptions. Right? Like we think, okay, but we communicated this so somebody knows. Well, my dad taught me assuming makes an ass out of you and me. And this was a beautiful example of like, here I was again. I made the assumption. I didn't clearly communicate it. Right. And like, as much as I would love for people to be able to read my mind, I know we're not there yet. Right. And that was a really good example of like, okay, check in with, like, for me to see what the breakdown was, and for me next time to slow down, because that is part of my pattern. Sometimes I move too quickly and I miss a step, and that was what had happened. I'd missed a step. But how beautiful, right? When you can, as a person, as a leader, acknowledge, okay, this is where the breakdown was. Great. I acknowledge it. I'm human. How to now fix this, come up with a solution. And now I know moving forward, right, to slow down and to check those little details, right? Which, again, we're human, right?
I think you're bringing up something so incredibly important here that we also get to address in this. And that is that we're talking about, having an acknowledgement, putting ourselves back in appropriate control, being able to look at what we can do to facilitate, but we're not talking about self-beat up. And one of the things that if you're a recovering perfectionist like me, and where I talk about the defense rising up, getting defensive when somebody's trying to share with me something that's not working, then I think it's really important to address that. We're not talking about self-beat up. We're talking about self-empowerment. And they're really close on the scale, on the balance. Like sometimes our greatest strengths can also be our greatest dysfunction, depending on which way they sway. So when we're talking about addressing this, we're talking about restoration. We're talking about life. We're talking about looking at what we can do to move things forward in a way that is beautiful and that is facilitating and that is restorative and encouraging and inspiring as leaders. And to catch if your brain's wanting to take you off into beat up, because that is not what we're discussing here. We're talking about the actual power of acknowledging our breakdowns. And as Alex has been saying, as you were just sharing, we are human. We get to do it messy. There is no such thing as perfectionism in this life. You can search high and low. And so many of us were taught that it has to look like this as a kid. And it all has to line up like this. And then we grew up and found out, hey, it's not working. What's going on here? Well, I don't understand. I was always taught that, it has to be this way. When in reality, when you're able to move with the flow, like you were just saying in an earlier episode, then that's where the power comes in. That's where the groundedness, the set nervous system, as we were talking about, with pattern interrupts, and that's where we begin to accelerate too, because we're able to move into things. And one of the parts of being able to acknowledge our breakdowns is it can also put us in a place where we can forgive. And let me
Mhm.
tell you, um, from an abundance standpoint, from an increasing your wealth standpoint, you're going to be amazed at what forgiveness is going to unlock for you. It's incredible. So we'll do a whole episode on that at some point. We've talked about that in the past, but our ability to forgive is very, very powerful. And when you are acknowledging a breakdown, whether yours or somebody else's, then you're able to step away from ego, step back into healthy, functional, restorative power, recognize what the situation from a big picture perspective looks like. As you were saying, Alex, I really love that. Being able to see the forest for the trees, right? You're not caught in that tree
Yeah.
of self-defense or of, and you're able to go, oh yeah, life can be messy. And when you forgive, it is a gift for yourself and it releases you. And, that's one of the most challenging things we can face when we're looking at forgiveness, thinking it's for the other person or they haven't apologized or where are they? They abandoned me or why should I apologize for that? It was wrong on every level. Or why should I forgive that rather? It was wrong on every level. And being able to step back and step into forgiveness really does increase your abundance on every level. It's for you. It's a gift
Mhm.
for you, whether they ever even know about it or not. They may have been passed away. You may never see them again in your life. But letting that go is a part of releasing what can be trapped in our bodies and in our nervous system. So I think that's important to bring it up. And doing this causes us not to brush it off, right?
Mhm.
To
And
try
what's
to,
happening for me as you're sharing, Carol's leading with love.
yeah,
It is that choice, choosing to lead with love. We can either look at like all the things that are not working or that went wrong, right? And that the
yeah,
self beat up, or we can choose to lead with love, both ourselves and others. And
yeah,
if we're looking at creating stronger relationships, acknowledging that you're human, I'm human, we're all human, right? Everybody
yeah,
wants to feel seen and heard. You know, I was just pulling up, I'm noticing, of course I follow a lot of parent blog, on Instagram and stuff. And there's been a lot lately around just how to model with your kids as well around,
mhm,
you know, um, acknowledging, right? It's this acknowledgement
yeah.
of that,
What you want that model to look like, you were
yeah.
speaking
And
about. Yeah,
it's that empowerment piece of like, we are all going to make mistakes,
yeah,
right? And it's a matter of how you go about acknowledging the choice that you made in that moment. And so
yeah,
what I was thinking, Carol, as we're wrapping up here today, to invite, the leader to look at, the next time that perhaps there's a little bit of confrontation, to pause
mhm,
and to really look at, okay, what's really underneath this confrontation? So
yeah,
really acknowledging, okay, so what, and ask the question, like, to yourself, even out loud, right? Sometimes it can
yeah,
help out loud, like, okay, what's under this confrontation, and looking for the breakdown. And it's like, okay, so this was it, and this was it, that just like we talk about the 7 layer why, the root of underneath what's in this
yeah,
breakdown, this confrontation, is also 7 layers deep, because it's not always the thing that you see in front of you. It's usually something that happened and occurred like in multiple steps, which is why
yeah,
it's so important to stop, because it's not always the thing that's right here.
mhm,
That's the trigger is way back there. And so the invitation is to stop and pause, to ask yourself, lead with curiosity, what is really at the root of this confrontation, this conflict, this breakdown?
yeah,
And then ask yourself, okay, if I'm a responsible leader, what role did I play in this? What is my breakdown?
Yeah.
What happened that led to this becoming the result? And acknowledge it. Acknowledge that this is the breakdown. And then look for, declare how you can now change this so this doesn't occur next time.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's really the true power in all of this, is like acknowledging there was a breakdown. You do acknowledge it, and you're committed for this not to happen again. Now, will it happen again? Maybe, because again, we're all human, but you're activating your brain, right? You're deciding in advance, you're setting a new intention that's going to support you in slowing down the next time to prevent something like this happening. And the reality is that the lesson's always going to happen until you get the lesson, right? And so, right. But just to be able to lean into that. Yeah. And to have, I'm just my invitation is to lead with curiosity with this, try it out, and really be curious through this process to see, okay, what's really the contributor, right? And you might notice, just like me, I made an assumption and I moved too quickly through something and I missed a step, right? So my lesson is I get to slow down. I get to double check, right? I get to not assume, right? Like, it's so easy to make a lot of assumptions. And I think that's where a lot of conflict comes from, is that assumption, right? Yeah. So no more assumptions. And
for me, it was recognizing limitations that I was giving life to through my words, and bringing that energy in and not even realizing it, not paying attention to what's going on, and using the tools that we have now that I recognize that those limiting beliefs have come up, those ants have come up, automated negative thoughts, that I can literally capture those, sit down, record those, and I can start to say, hey, okay, I get what the story is underneath now, and I get to neutralize and erase those and replace it with the things that I do want to speak into life in my family and in my relationships. Yeah.
Well, leader, we know that you're not here to follow the rules, right? You're here to rewrite them with belief, boldness, and wealth that aligns.
Hey, I want to tell you, there's a neuro wealth method that is absolutely available for you, where we close the gap for you to be able to operate in 7 and 7+ figures. I do have a private invite program. It's an exclusive private invite program. If you are ready to accelerate your wealth, then please DM me on IG. Let me know. We can talk about it. I'd love to meet you there.
And your website, if you got a website, it should reflect the wealth that you're out to create, because your expertise changes lives, and it's time that more people knew about it. So until next time, leader, stay unleashed and unstoppable. We'll see you next Thursday. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Unleashed Unstoppable podcast with your hosts, Alexandra Carter and Carol Register.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review, and subscribe.
That's all for this episode, Wildly Ambitious Leaders. See you next week.